We're now on to the third match of my recent Dredge League. We're currently 2-0. And on the draw. So I think we need to mulligan this hand. We don't have a discard outlet. We have a bunch of dredges but nothing to do with them. And this hand's great. Icarid goes to the bottom because we don't really need another Icarid. We just need another Dredger. We have plenty of recurable creatures. We just need a way to actually, to actually start dredging, to start getting ahead here. Our opponent's gone Lotus Petal Brainstorm, which I would normally expect them to be on Storm. Probably the Epic Storm or a fairly aggressive Ant player, and the Underground Sea does not really do anything to remove this belief. Faithless Looting resolves, but unfortunately we are still in need of a way to start dredging. So we pitch the Icarid and the Amalgam. We're going to want to pitch, ideally, an Icarid and another Amalgam next turn. We're not going to reanimate the Icarid here. Cephalid Colosseum is a perfect draw. We're going to cast Breakthrough. Breakthrough for 1. And this will let us hold on to the second Breakthrough while hopefully finding a Dredger in our top 4 cards, which we do easily. And it also looks like okay. So it looks like what we're going to do is we're going to use the LED this turn to flashback the Faithless Looting. To let us try and dredge a little bit deeper, and then we can use the Cephalid Colosseum next turn. Unfortunately, opponent has dazed Faithless Looting, which is not the end of the world. Given how deep we are now into our deck, we're very likely to start hitting lots of dredges fairly quickly. We're also going to be able to go Icarid, trigger Amalgam, and put 12 power on the board. Daze does one thing here, which indicates our opponent is almost definitely not on Storm, unless they're on one of the weird Daze builds that I have seen occasionally before. Oh wow, we're looking in bad shape here. We really needed to find another Dredger there, so we have done an absurdly small amount of dredging. So we'll draw 3, discard 3, and the LED is going to let us repeat what we did before with the Faithless Looting. And hopefully this time we'll get to dredge, and we do. Okay, so we're actually starting to look pretty good now. We're also now far enough ahead that once we start casting these therapies off our Icarids, we're going to end up with most likely lethal on board, and our opponent will probably scoop. So I think we just name Force of Will here. Yep. So we're playing in the blind, but we are going to assume some kind of combo deck given the Lotus Petals, or we should assume some kind of the combo deck given the Lotus Petals. I remember this match because I was very confused because I didn't know which decks ran Lotus Petal and Daze, and I completely forgot that the deck that runs Lotus Petal plus Daze plus Underground Sea is Reanimator. So we've kind of hedged here. So we've brought in a small amount of acceleration. So we brought in our lotus petals. We're going to try to go under them. And we brought in our a little bit of removal for things like cage. And we kept a reasonably strong 7. So we're going to get to lead on Cephalid, Colosseum, and Careful Study. And Careful Study will then hopefully let us find a Dredger and get Faithless Looting going. So opponents brainstorm, so they obviously want to try to daze the Careful Study again. Which is kind of indicating to us that they didn't really keep a hand with any actual hate in it. So they've just been trying to buy themselves time. We're not really pleased to see the Thoughtseize. Most of the gas in our hand. Oh, I'm surprised he took the bridge from below there. That indicates a surgical, I think. Yep, so you can see him paying for the surgical. Having bridges surgical is not actually the end of the world. And it's something we can actually beat. So we're going to use the Faithless Looting here to find an extra couple of cards and hopefully a Dredger. And we were not successful at that. So we've had really bad luck with finding Dredgers this game. And that streak is continuing. So I think it was fairly reasonable to concede there. We've got nothing going on. We've got one land. It's going to take us a very long time to draw back up to hand size. And our opponent's going to have plenty of time to try to get us. This hand's fantastic. So this hand is, if LED resolves, then our opponent needs something like double Force of Will to prevent Faithless Looting from happening. We're just hoping our opponent doesn't have Surgical Extraction here. And we get a bit stung again on our Dredges. So we're going to want to get our Iona on black here if we can. Okay, and there's the Surgical again. So our opponents had some pretty good starts in games 2 and 3 here. We still have the potential to get a fair bit of gas. We're going to hopefully have 2 Dredges. Oh, an opponent forces. Okay, so we really need our Stinkweed Imp to start hitting us, hitting something. The Amalgam's not going to be doing anything. At least not anytime soon. Our Icarids are much weaker without bridges. There's still a fair beating. And Cabal therapies get a lot worse as well, as they're no longer generating value. And to make things better, we didn't whiff on a Dredger, we've got the Grave Troll. So we still can't do anything with that Icarid. And we've just lost our Iona. On the flip side, it turns out Iona triggers Prized Amalgam, which is not an interaction that I was aware of. So from here, we can start. We're hoping to be able to start going through our graveyard, but we've whiffed again on Dredges. We're actually looking okay though, as our opponent, at least at the moment, they don't have any creatures in their graveyard. They can't cast another Reanimate, as we don't have anything. We have a single Narc Amoeba for them to reanimate, which is not worth their time, as it takes 2 life away from them and leaves them with a 1/1. And they're not going to attack with Iona because we have a faster clock than them, abnormally. So we're in a little bit of a stalemate here. Long term, our opponent is actually favoured. He's going to find, he's got cantrips to help him rebuild. It won't take much for him to find something like Ponder into Entomb into Exhume, which would leave us in a pretty tough spot. But at least for now, we're just going to try to play draw go and hope that he gets impatient. So normally Reanimator is a real kind of combo killer deck with a combination of their own Iona, Eleshnorn, Grizzlebrand, and the blue-black version having counter magic on top of everything else. They can normally quickly and effectively close out the game while being able to protect their own combo in a way that most decks can't. They even threaten decks like Sneak and Show because of the fact that they have their own Grizzlebrands. Here we can see, however, the result of them whiffing. Alright, so we want to pitch the Icarid here. And the reason we want to pitch the Icarid is that we want to start. It's going to take us a very long time to find enough lands to cast a Grave Troll. So we're better off pitching the Icarid and preparing to be able to bash. Now, there's a reason here we should have pitched the Troll instead of the Stinkweed Imp. And the reason for that is exactly what's happened. So our opponents now cast Reanimate. They go to 4 to do this. if they'd done this on the Grave Troll, if we dumped the Grave Troll in the bin, the Grave Troll would calculate off their graveyard, I believe. Which puts them in a position where they can pay. So they can pay to get the Grave Troll back, but they end up losing a bunch of life and ending up with nothing to show for it. Whereas the Stinkweed Imp, they actually get a Death Touch creature in play, which is relevant. So now we've been the trolls, which we should have done to begin with. We're going to probably we're going to dredge a troll. We're not going to reanimate the Icarids yet. We need to find more black creatures first. And I think, fortunately for us, we can play out an Reanimator here. So we should be hard casting one of these Reanimators, just to put as much damage on the board as is possible. And what we really want to do is just be able to try to, yeah, so we made another mistake there. We're playing this pretty poorly. But we're in a bit of a tough spot. What we really want to be able to do is go as wide as possible. So playing out, hard casting as many of our creatures as we can. Lets us try to go wide and leaves us in a position to crash in with, look, if we can't do it with a bunch of Icarids, then we're going to do it with just smashing them with Reanimators. Our opponent's cast Entomb twice, which is the second Entomb is for a polluted delta. So that tells me at the moment he's just going for thinning, which I don't think is a particularly winning strategy here. Alright, and so now we're just trying to crash in. We're going to be relying heavily on this Grave Troll, getting us more black creatures, which it has not done. No, this just pushes through for the remaining 4. That's fine.